Very good morning on the bright sunshine day of Saturday weekend. I welcome Mr. Manavji, Executive Director from Steelwood International on behalf of Amity University, Haryana. And very good morning to all my students and all my faculties from School and Engineering. Uh, Thank you, Manavji, for taking time out and agreed to share your insight, your entrepreneurial journey to our students. Before I hand over the podium to you, let me give a brief introduction to all my students and faculties. Your life journey in crisp and short, so that most of the time we'll listen to you and get enlightens all the students to take some cue from your entrepreneurial journey. And now the startup bandwagon is also going around the country. Mr. Manav Kapoor is the executive director of Steelbird Group, a firmly built on unshakable code of ethics. Steelbird today in India is premier brand in the automotive industry with 55 years of experience, proven expertise, and a tradition of excellence, as well as enviable portfolio of OEM customers and exports to over 15 countries worldwide. Mr. Manav is known to be a man on a mission, having risen through the ranks to his current capacity in a remarkably short span of time on the strength of his stellar achievements. He is today justifiably entrusted with the task of managing and controlling the overall business operations of Steelbird across the diverse range of business operations, credited with building an organization which is family owned yet professionally managed. Mr. Manav has also been awarded the prestigious Entrepreneur of the Year 2019 for his outstanding achievements. Mr. Manav brings a new perspective to the business. Mr. Manav's professional timeline traces back to year 2005 when a fresh management graduate from prestigious Scott College of Business, Indiana State University, US. He joined Steelbird like any other trainee. His engineering degree in computer science prior to management qualification was instrumental in making him perfectly poised for such a professional opportunity. He took charge of production after completing his on the job training over a period of 2 years. The global recession struck in the year 2008, where the best of business folded up around the world. It presented an opportunity for young Manav to strategize and navigate his company through an extremely tumultuous period and finally emerge stronger. Like he says today, challenges don't pull me down. In fact, they bring out my best. With this, charismatic words, I will hand over now podium to Mr. Manav and share his lifelong journey with Steelbird, how he started. Over to you, Manavji.
Thank you. Thank you for the nice introduction, Mr. Gupta. So, it's nice to know all of this, but trust me, there have been more failures than success even in my life. So, don't, for everyone listening out there, the first thing is you need to learn from your failures. And that's what I've been doing throughout my life. So, it's not, you generally see the success of an entrepreneur and how he's, behaving now, but you really don't see when he's failed. So that is something very important which you should look at. A lot of people have failed a lot of times before they actually come up strong. So that is the key learning from my side, where don't give up on failures. And if you look at a lot of successful people who have been extremely successful in doing whatever they've been doing, have actually had so many failures before that, including me. I'm not saying that I'm an exception. So even if you look at some names like Walt Disney, he was, I think about 300 times he was denied any funding before he actually got the funding for setting up this Disney empire what he set up today. So how many of us today actually would think of going to a bank 300 times, to different organizations, financial institutions 300 times? We would generally give up 5 times, 7 times, 10th time you'll just give up, like this is it. I can't, this idea doesn't work because nobody is accepting my ideas.
Hello?
But those who have actually done it,
One minute,
they've
just hold for a
actually
second. No,
stuck,
I'm in a Zoom meeting.
they actually stuck around with that idea and with their thought and their passion. So entrepreneurship is all about commitment, first thing, and the purpose. So the most important thing is, like, what is the purpose of what you're trying to do? So, I mean, if you look at any of a successful entrepreneur, I mean, do you think they are actually doing whatever they're doing only for money? Which I strongly disbelieve. I mean, money, even in the words of Dhirubhai Ambani, what he said was, if someone is doing business only to make money, he's a fool. That was Dhirubhai Ambani's words. And we know how much money they've made. But the point is, they were not trying to make money at all. So they were actually trying to solve a problem. So, for my understanding, the definition of an entrepreneur, the topic is entrepreneurship. So, the definition of entrepreneur is a problem solver. So, an entrepreneur is a problem solver who's solving a problem, and in return, he gets some profit out of it. He gets some money for it. So, if you are looking to be an entrepreneur, you should look for a bigger problem. The bigger the problem you look at, the bigger the entrepreneur you become. And you should look at unique ways of solving the problem. So that is what an entrepreneur, as per my definition, is. So that's what everyone should be focusing on. Instead of focusing on making money, focus on a problem which you think, and you have to be passionate about solving the problem. Irrespective of what happens, what the world tells you, you have to be passionate on, this is the problem which I am willing to take up as I'm willing to take up to solve this problem. If you look at even today's startup world, the amount of wealth these guys have created for themselves is mind blowing. A lot of people have done so many things which nobody in the world has done. If you look at the top 10 richest people in the world, half of them come from startup worlds where they actually had no, there's no backing. Because a lot of people think like to be an entrepreneur, to be successful, you have to have some family wealth with you to take you to the next level, where that could be a platform where you take off from. That could be a runway where you take off from. But honestly speaking, if you look at the top entrepreneurs in the world today, none of them had that kind of platforms. I mean, if you look at Amazon for today, for that matter, do they really have any platform to do that? But he was very focused. Jeff Bezos, he was really focused on solving a problem of convenient shopping. He wasn't really looking to make money. I mean, if you think he was trying to think of, I will be the richest person in the world one day, and that's what he's focused on, probably he would not make it. But he was focusing on how do I give them an experience and then the comfort of shopping from home, whatever you want, at as quickly as you can and at the best price possible. And that's not easy to think of, I mean, like, to deliver. But once you do that, you get rewarded for that. So that's what entrepreneurship is all about, and you have to be committed. So there's no way of giving up on anything what you do. So there's a Japanese saying, fall 7 times, get up the 8th time. So that's what the commitment level has to be. So if you have decided, you cannot just walk away from anything and saying, okay, it's too tough, or it's something I don't think is going to work. So once you have decided what is the problem you want to solve, you have to commit yourself and you have to be passionate about it. You can't just solve a problem by just saying, okay, this is something, I think something has to be done around it. But you have to be passionate about it, and you have to do a lot of practice. Practice is the next thing what I talk about. I mean, like, that's what differentiates an expert from a non-expert. An expert is one who has practiced anything over a period of time. So that's pretty much the definition of entrepreneurship from my side.
Manavji, you can continue.
Okay.
Yeah, you can continue.
Sure. So that's what I'm saying about being passionate. Now coming to the next 5 to 10 years, what we see as an industry, I mean, like, and it's not only the automotive industry, it could be any industry. There could be, I mean, like, next 5 to 7 years are absolutely the years of disruption. And trust me, most of the time disruption is happening from outside the industry. It is never happening from inside the industry. If you look at the disruptors in the recent world, I mean, the recent past is like, people like, say, even auto sector is like people like Ola, Uber, or Tesla. So none of them had any experience in the auto sector. None of them were actually even remotely related to the sector. And none of them had the capital. So, and those guys have come and disrupted the entire industry. So, I mean, like, this is what is going to be, I don't know which kid sitting where will disrupt which business model, including mine. And so for all the audience out here, so this is a very good sign for them, because I mean, like, gives them confidence, that you can disrupt anything with respect to, being innovative in your thinking. And you don't have to have a lot of donkey years of experience to do anything in this industry today. So even auto sector is going to get disrupted anytime soon. And look at it as an opportunity for all of you guys out here. How can you disrupt this industry even? I mean, we have seen a lot of disruption happening with the, even with the non-auto sectors like Zomato and Swiggy, and all these guys came from nowhere. And they have actually, taken away the entire business, and people are just wondering what happened to them. And I see a lot of disruption coming in the auto sector, in the electric vehicle space now. So EV is going to disrupt the entire automotive manufacturing sector itself. And it's a huge sector, mind you. I mean, like, automotive sector today is about 49% of India's manufacturing GDP. So it's like every second thing, I mean, like half of the things what we manufacture is automotive in the country. I mean, like that's the size of this industry, employing close to about 1.5 million people. So that 15 million, sorry, about 15 million people are working with the automotive sector. And out of this 15 million, majority of them are working in the manufacturing. About 50% out of this is actually working with the auto component sector. And you know how the auto component sector is going to be disrupted? The amount of auto components in an internal combustion engine is about 2000, whereas when it comes to an electric vehicle, it comes down to 20. So that's the kind of disruption that's going to happen in the auto component space as well. So that's what I mean is something as an opportunity you should look at, because once the electric vehicle comes, everyone comes at par. It becomes a level ground playing field for everybody, because nobody really has a lot of experience in the EV space. I mean, you cannot say that this company has been in the EV space for 100 years, which most of the automotive component companies or even the auto OEMs are today. But we've seen new startups coming and challenging the industry leaders like no one else has done before. I mean, you look at the new EV players, they don't have any automotive experience. I mean, like you look at Ather, or even in India, I'm talking, I mean, like startups like Ather and all, they came from nowhere, and they are actually challenging the giants like Heroes and Tatas of the country to think over their business model again, because these guys are far more lean. They have far more lesser, I'll say they're more swift in doing whatever they want to do. So that's a huge opportunity coming your way. I mean, like, every sector you look at, I mean, like in auto, the amount of people that company employs. I mean, for every vehicle made, for a car, there are about 5 people employed. For every commercial vehicle made, there are 13 people employed. For every two-wheeler, there's 0.5 people employed. For every three-wheeler, there's 3.9 people employed. So that's the kind of employment what we are generating. And it's not only this sector in automotive that will be disrupted, which is manufacturing. There's other sectors linked to automotive, which are, other than there'll be, if you look at the complete life cycle of the automotive sector. So it starts from, auto component manufacturing. Next goes the auto OEMs, which are manufacturing the vehicles. Then next is the dealerships, then service centers, logistic companies, insurance companies, tire companies, battery manufacturing companies. So all these companies are all a part of the automotive life cycle. In all these life cycles, everything, do you think it's only once this is disrupted, the auto OEMs are disrupted, everyone in this value chain will be disrupted, and there'll be opportunities for everybody everywhere. So I mean, like, it's not that only auto component companies will be taking a hit. Even the dealership model is going to change significantly. Tesla has decided never to have a dealership. They'll only have experience centers, and they'll have, you order your car online. So that's the kind of disruption will happen even in the space of dealerships. Same goes for servicing. I mean, like, servicing business models are also going to get disrupted. For instance, we've seen a lot of roadside garages earlier, but now companies like Tesla are coming up with lifetime warranties, where they say we'll cover your vehicle forever. So that's the kind of changes I expect to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. And there's an opportunity for everybody out there to explore in these things. And that's pretty much the crux of what I wanted to talk about. So I'd rather keep it more interactive, where I would like to understand, this is my perspective of the industry and entrepreneurship put together. So I would like to understand if this makes sense to them, or they want to understand something more in more detail. So I would be more than happy to talk more on those things.
Okay, Manavji, I have got a couple of questions in the chat box, so probably those could be another, I would say, ground for further, inputs or a small interaction from your side.
Sure.
Let me ask you the first question. Uh, this question is from Miss Surya, MBA second sem. She want to, see what were the challenges faced by Steelbird in this time of pandemic.
Okay.
Yeah, so she's asking this question.
So, I mean, like when the pandemic happened, so it was, I mean, this is one thing which nobody can claim that they were aware of it. So it was, the entire industry was stuck with the lightning and which nobody was prepared for. And, there's a saying by Warren Buffett, which says, when it's only when there's a low tide, when people come to know who's been swimming naked. So that's the low tide came without any understanding of, and a lot of companies had a lot of issues. So the companies who were not financially very stable had actually, taken a severe hit. Thankfully, we were able to sustain and, get through this tough time because, I mean, what my belief is any company which fails, it's not because of sales or operations or technology or anything. Primarily, 99% of the companies fail because of poor finance management. And if when they don't have right kind of finance management, then they are actually using their short term for long term loans and whatnot, and they are just letting things go the way they are. So if you're well managed financially, if your finance management is right, then you are generally able to control your your ship in the right direction. So thankfully, we were able to control ourselves in the right direction. Yes, it was a tough time because we could never understand what could happen now because we hire we have a huge family who works with us, and there's zero sales, absolute zero sales. And there was a joke going around in WhatsApp as well. Even if you're the number one company in the country and you're the smallest company in the country, your sales are equal for the month of April because nobody did any sales whatsoever other than the FMCG and some healthcare companies. So it was a tough time, but again, another saying by my, I mean, the person I really look up to is Warren Buffett, and he says, "Never let a crisis go waste." So we took up the opportunity and we developed a lot of products around the COVID requirements. Because filtration is a key area for us, where we've been in the filtration space for almost 50 years, 55 years now. So we decided to come up with some masks which were as good as any other N95 mask from the anywhere on the world you get it. So we could encash on that. Other than that, we made sure that our people were involved in everything, and there were regular talks from my side to the organization where we would interact with them, understand their position. And I was blessed to have a team which was really supportive, and they all came up to me, and it was pretty much a brainstorming session with the entire top team, and they came up with ideas how to sail through this and make sure that we don't really have to leave anyone behind and take as many people along with us as we can. And so that worked for us. And auto sector had a recovery faster than anyone could ever think of. And within a span of 2 months, I think we were back at full numbers. After the first Q1 was difficult, Q2 onwards we were right on track. So there was nothing to be worried on Q2 onwards. So yes, pandemic did have an impact for us, but thankfully we were blessed to have the right finances in place, and our technology and our understanding of filtration helped us to encash on the opportunity as well, which came along with COVID. And post that, the recovery was pretty quick for the entire auto sector.
Okay, the next question is has a little bit of a background about your industry and then followed by a question. I think it's a very rightly and aptly put by Miss Diksha Malviya. She's our student from MBA Executive MBA program. So she's saying we have seen in this COVID scenario that Steelbird very quickly shifted its focus production from helmets to normal COVID face shields, then rotational shields. After a few days, we saw new products in face shield from the competitors of Steelbird. How has R&D and production team in Steelbird have been able to change and adapt themselves to the new environment so quickly?
So we've been R&D driven throughout. So we've been I mean, like, we have a separate division for R&D, so which works on new products. And so these guys are, I mean, like, I'll give all my credit to my R&D team for doing this pretty quickly, and working out into new products which were more need of the hour than what they thought could be a problem. So again, I mean, it boils down to what was the problem you're trying to solve and how passionate you are about solving a problem. So if you see a problem with respect to COVID, this is the problem what the COVID has brought us, and if you're passionate about helping us, okay, so we look at what is it they want to do? They want to protect the people, fine. What is it they passionately, once you start thinking, so you start thinking, how can I protect him with giving him some comfort as well? So then you start thinking on how can we move it up a bit? Can we add Bluetooth to it or whatever? I mean, like, so what is it that would actually give him a comfort and yet solve the problem as well? So again boils down to the basic concept of being passionate about what you're trying to do. So that's what it helped us, and if you continue to do that, you'll come up with products which will be unique, and they'll be leading the market. And it's not, I mean, you don't design a product thinking that, okay, we want to make a product which will give us a lot of profit, but we design a product which will actually solve the problem.
Okay, thank you, Manavji, for the inputs and response. Now, the next question is from Komal Sharma. She's asking, does an entrepreneur and an inventor do essentially the same thing?
To a certain extent, yes. But the difference between an entrepreneur and inventor is, the inventor is limited towards, just inventing something, whereas an entrepreneur is looking at driving some profit out of it as well. So he's not, I mean, that's primarily a basic difference. And plus, an inventor is limited to only inventing a product, whereas an entrepreneur could be, with respect to other than product, it could be a service, it could be a business model. So a lot of disruptions which the entrepreneurs have done recently are actually not with respect to a product invention. So they were with respect to, business model innovations. So a lot of innovation, yes, you're right, absolutely. Innovation is the key over here, but there was a lot of innovation at the business model level itself. Especially if you look at the newer startups, I mean, like, all of them are business model innovations. They're not product innovations. They're not service innovations either. I mean, at the end of the day, so Zomato and Swiggy serve you the same food what your local, eating joint near your house was serving you. But they came up with a business model innovation which really served a lot of problems for a lot of people. So that's the key difference there. So it could be an entrepreneur is primarily an entrepreneur could be an inventor, but in a different manner, and it's not necessarily that it's his own idea as well either. I mean, like, he might be a great executor. It could be someone. I mean, a lot of apps written today are not written by the guy who's running the show. He's not an expert in writing an app to get the cab close to you. So an Ola and Uber guy might not be the right who's running the app as an organization, might not be a great innovator himself, but he's a great implementer of the innovation done by one of his team members, which was probably a thought conceived by him and some other people along with him.
Okay, thank you, Manavji. The next question is from Mr. Sahil Verma, and he's asking, which is more risky and challenging, online entrepreneurship or offline entrepreneurship?
See, Sahil, again, I mean, like, challenging and risky online and offline are, I mean, this is kind of irrelevant when it comes to entrepreneurship. So once you're looking at that, so I mean, like, nowadays there's a lot of buzz around online space. But if you really see a problem which you can solve, which is missing in the online space, I mean, it could be online. But if you sign something which is offline and it is solving a similar problem, a lot of it today nowadays is online because there's a lot of buzz around it, and a lot of funding is going in the online manner. Because overall trends, if you look at, so most of the businesses are actually moving online. So the reason for moving them online is convenience. It's not that there's more money there. It's more convenient there. And so is the funding coming from the various the venture capitalist or the seed funds. So they're all looking at online because future the space will be online for most of the businesses. But again, I mean, it again boils down to the same thing. If you're able to solve a problem which is even offline solved in a similar manner, and delivers great results, then nothing like it doesn't matter if you're online or offline.
Uh, uh, there is a one question in correlation to this asked by Paras Pandita. So it's saying that in an entrepreneurial journey, uh, do we really focus on a problem or we focus on solving the problem?
So they're intermingled. I mean, you can't say that you can't focus on one, you can't focus on the other. It's like, I mean, like you have to first identify a problem and look for a unique solution. So I mean, like at times the bigger challenge over here is the problem is generally right in front of you, but you still can't see it. And because it's been there and we are used to living with that problem. So nobody ever thought that you could get a cab at the click of a button. And nobody saw it as a problem ever. I mean, like, honestly speaking, I never saw it as a problem. Cab book karna hai, so you have to go online, or I mean, you have to go to a taxi stand and book it. So nobody saw that as a problem because we are so comfortable doing that. So you give them more comfort by giving them a solution which is even better. So solving the problem is something. First you have to, if you actually want to do something unique, you have to figure out a problem which people are okay with. People are not even aware that there's a problem, something like this. So that's, I think, the critical part. Then how do you solve that is equally critical. So I mean they both go hand in hand. You can't say that one is good, one is, I mean, like one is, if you identify a problem but you're not able to solve it, doesn't work either that ways.
Okay, okay. Then there's a next question from Mr. Kartikeya Sharma. He's saying that as we know, there are tough competitors of Steelbird like Vega, Sturts, etc. So, what are the sales and promotional strategies used by Steelbird to attract the customers?
See, again, sales and promotions will always be there. They'll be always, see, there are certain things, there are a lot of things which matter a lot when you're trying to compete. So competition, as per the definition of competition, it's a Latin word actually. If you look at competition, what does it actually mean? It means conspiring to make each other better. That's the Latin definition of the word compete. So you're actually competing with each other, but you're yet trying to make each other better. So that's what you're trying to do. So I mean, honestly, when we are doing anything, so we are focusing on certain things like QCD is the main: quality, cost, and delivery. Then range. So we have to constantly innovate ourselves around cost, around quality, and delivery. How good a product can I make? How cost effectively I can make? How quickly can I deliver to the customer? And what is the range of the product I can offer to them? So these are the key areas where we focus. Okay, so every time you're doing something, anybody in the organization doing anything, they're aligned to these four criteria: quality, cost, delivery, and product range. So four areas is where we continue to strive and try to improve. So we have continuous kaizens around it. Kaizen is Japanese philosophy where you try to improve whatever you're doing earlier. Continuous improvement is what we try to do with respect to all these four aspects. So that's what you continue doing, that irrespective of what the world is telling you and what your competitor is doing. You have your own competition. You have to conspire with yourself to make yourself better. So I mean, like, just to draw an analogy, do you think, I mean, like, Virat Kohli would be wondering, yeah, what is the South African or an England captain doing? Let me do the same thing. No, he's not. He's focusing on his own game. He's like, I have to improve myself. So that's what you continue to do.
Okay, great. There is a one question from our very senior faculty from Amity Business School. His name is Dr. Ajay Kumar Pandey. So he's asking how entrepreneurship can be built upon in the present ecosystem of vendors, suppliers of automobile industry. Does the reconfiguration of supply chain is going to provide opportunities to upcoming entrepreneurships?
Absolutely, Dr. Pandey. So the thing is, like, I mean, like, the auto sector is, as I mentioned earlier as well, is going to go through a lot of disruption anytime soon. So we've seen a lot of disruption coming in the auto post manufacturing space, especially in the your vehicle utility space, where the vehicle utility from private personal mobility is going into shared mobility. So that's the kind of disruption we've seen there. Similar things, kind of Uberization of the automotive manufacturing could also happen in the future. That's my personal belief, where there'll be a common space where people will be manufacturing vehicles instead of just having standalone factories. So that's the supply chain will come in picture, where the disruption happens there. And with the electric vehicles coming in place, the technology barrier for developing a good engine is what was holding the large giant companies to hold their as a moat around their businesses. But with the newer technology coming in, and pretty much everyone having the similar experience, because the technology is not very old, so the moat of having an experienced R&D or an experienced manufacturing setup would really be taken away. that is where the disruption will start. Where, you know, when everyone says, okay, if I'm an hero or if I'm an Ather, so I'm pretty much same experience in doing the electric vehicles. So that's where disruption will start happening. And I think in future automotive space, the manufacturing would become something, and the product would become something similar to the white goods industry, where, you know, you and white good or computer somewhere in, it will be a hybrid between this, where, you know, you buy a, I mean, like a fridge or a refrigerator, or you know, a laptop, where you mention like, this is the laptop and it's got a RAM of this much, it's got an Intel processor. So that's what is going to happen with auto space, where, you know, people will be assembling vehicles and they'll say, okay, this is the motor rating of the vehicle and this is the battery life, and rest is all the add-ons which the vehicle manufacturer will do. So that's the disruption I see in the auto supply chain as well.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Manav. There is one question which is more or less same asked by two set of students. One is Surya again, and the other one is Pushkar. So they want to, ask. So funding is a very important aspect of any entrepreneurship venture. So how to grab the attention of the, venture capital firm, and how an upcoming entrepreneur present his business idea to them. So what are the tips, and how youngsters can attract big venture capital funding companies to fund their idea and give them a startup ecosystem in their scenario.
Okay. So Surya, Pushkar, so the basic idea is, you know, I mean, like my concept is, if your business model and your entrepreneur are good, funding is the last thing you need to worry about. See, I mean, I'm also a part of an accelerator fund where you fund a lot of startups. It's a decent 100 crore fund, which we are, a pool of entrepreneurs from an industry as well as from, you know, from related industries, which we started this fund by the name of Risers. So Risers Accelerator. So what we look at, I'll be very clear and candid upon what are we looking at when we're looking to fund people on, you know, starting new businesses. It's broken into two parts. One is, what is the problem you're trying to solve? And second, what kind of an entrepreneur you are. So if the problem is big and it is a unique way of solving it, replicas do not work. Simple as that. I mean, you have to be unique in thinking it out. Like, what is the difference between, you know, my model and anything else which is there in the model? If you say, hey, I'm gonna make another Uber, or if I'm gonna make another, say, Zomato, does not really work, because I mean, they've already solved a problem which does not really need to be solved again. So there's no point reinventing the wheel. So someone's already invented the wheel, you stick to that. And that's where you see the consolidation happening in most of the startup worlds. So if you're looking at, you know, really being a startup, first identify the problem, and if funding will come to you is when you have a unique business model where you're actually kind of, you know, doing something which no one else has done before. And secondly, how good an entrepreneur you are. So by defining how good an entrepreneur, so, you know, how's your team spirit? How's your, you know, how much can you lead a team? How can you work as a team with the other people in the organization, whichever you're trying to create? Then, you know, what is your commitment level? How passionate you are about your business? How much time, energy, and are you only there in for money? So that is a bigger concern. I mean, honestly speaking, the biggest concern is this guy. I mean, from speaking from a venture capitalist perspective, is this guy only here to make money? If it is so, then you might not get what you're looking for. So that's the interesting bit. I mean, if you're there for money and you won't get it. Simple. So you have to come up with a solution, with a proposal where you're actually there to solve a problem, and demonstrate that you're passionate about this problem. You are, you know, committed towards it, and you won't give up. So that's the key areas where you actually, you know, kind of win the hearts of the investors.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Manav. There's one question from Paras. He's asking, in the current quick changing market these days, as an entrepreneur, should one think about the scalability of the business as a startup, or should focus on the product?
The scalability is important, and products both are important. You can't say that one goes without the other, but it depends again. I mean, like, what problem you're trying to solve and what are you trying to do. So just don't get into something just because it's a huge scale which could be addressed. and don't shy away from something which is too small to do. You don't know when is a small scale business going to go big, and you don't know when a big business might come down to a small scale. Have your conviction right, where you know what you want to do, and just have that answer with you. This is what I want to do here, and this is what it is. I'll do it irrespective of the size. Size does not matter to me. Solving the problem, being compassionate about the problem is what matters.
Okay. Okay, I think we are done up with that question answer session, Manoj. Now I would like to invite Manoj to quickly, summarize, and if he has any question to ask, and may conclude with the vote of thanks. Manoj, over to
Uh,
you.
Thank you, Ankur. Manavji, thank you so much. I'm sure it was a very interactive session, and a lot of learning the students have taken from here. I'm sure they had good queries which were addressed to you very perfect, totally with perfection. Uh, I have no questions as far as Steelbird is doing. It is going to grow leaps and bounds, and my best wishes are there for you. Certainly, things normalize. We would like you to invite you at our campus for addressing perhaps a bigger audience.
Absolutely.
And also we'll take you to our incubation cell, wherein you can have a fairer idea as to what we do in terms of entrepreneurships and incubation. And also we can explore synergies regarding to know you. We got Amity University. It's a big name, and yeah, we have students all across streams. We have mechanical, civil, management. There are a number of courses we have. If you have, we will also explore some possibilities for internships and final placements with your prestigious organization. I'm sure, Ankur, you please touch base with Monica and further with Manav sir, and see if we can work out towards a better, strong bonding and association with the prominent Steelbird industries. And thank you once again, Manav. And how's the weather in Nainital?
Nainital's good, yeah. Start warming up here as well.
So evenings are where, at Boaters Club?
No. I'm actually not exactly Nainital. I'm a little away from Nainital. I'm in the wilderness. So my estate is right next to Nokochiatar.
Okay.
So it's kind of, and my backyard is entire forest reserve. So
Awesome. So good, yeah. We guys are envy of you. You're having a good time. So my best wishes, Manav. Ankur, would you like to sum it up? And thank you once again, Manav, from the bottom of my heart to come over, spare your time and address our students. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Sani. It was a pleasure interacting with everybody. It feels nice. It feels nice to
thank you.
Thanks once again, Manavji, for such an enriching session. And we look forward very soon to our campus, and we can, explore more synergies to take this, relationship forward. As this is just only the beginning, so we look forward for more initiatives to engage with your esteemed organization. Once again, thanks a lot, Manavji.
Thank you.